Everybody, the GM told the players, asked the players nicely if we could cut the scene a little short because they were starting to get really uncomfortable about how they were describing their love life. And the players got weirdly mad, and the GM felt like it was kind of a reasonable question. Then there was some arguing going back and forth, and the GM's like, you know what, I'll see y'all next week. Everybody got cooled down, so session's canceled, and everybody's a little uncomfortable now. I made it sound like we're gonna be talking about that something weird, sexy roleplay related. Not actually gonna be the case. Semi-related. What?
I am low key a little bit. I am low key the cause of that, something like that happening at a table.
How? What? Huh?
Okay. I think I've told this story before. So it was on the eponymous game that blew up at the home stretch. And
wait. Which eponymous game that blew up? Wait. The Ragnarok one? Is it we're talking
Ragnarok
about?
one. Yeah.
Okay.
And we were at the town where everything blew up, right? Like the town with the black dragon or whatever.
Right.
And my character, who was gay, saw this like Twinkie half elf who was like staring him down, and in my head I was like, this character is suspicious. I had no thoughts in my head to the contrary other than I can interrogate this person for information. So I go up and talk to that character after the like lord of the town has done his speech or whatever, and the character's like, oh, can we talk somewhere more private? And I was like, am I going to get stabbed? At this point, I'm still not thinking it's going to go sexy. And we get to a place, and the character full on straddles my character's waist, and I'm like, oh, I see. And like, the GM is kind of like playing coy with it. I'm like, oh, no. You've done this. Now I have to go overboard. So my character, I describe my character's like snaking his hands up his thighs and like lower back, and he's like, okay, wait. And I was like, no, you did this.
What? You didn't have to escalate like that though.
No, I did though. I
don't. Did you?
Yes.
That feels like quite the escalation.
Look, he could have been like, he sits next to you, he takes your hand. Not that he just full on starts grinding. I'm like, all right, well, now I have to go wild.
Why did the GM do this?
Basically, the twink character was gonna try to seduce and then poison me. But I rolled really high on a perception, B persuasion, and the character told me his whole plan, and then he was like, you're not gonna kill me, right? And I was like, well, that depends on the next 10 to 30 minutes.
How far did you get before the GM cut you off?
The snaking hands up thighs thing was as far as it got descriptively. But no, I ended up done smash that elf. And then my actions caused a domino effect where every other player character in the game smashed the same day.
Oh.
And
how? What?
Because everybody's like, well, if he's doing it, I'm doing it. One character smashed a dragon. The other one seduced the fucking vizier lady of the lord. One person went to, one character went to his other dragon mistress because there was two of those for some reason. And then the funniest one, truly to me, was Moogie being like, where's Brett's character? I'm finna smash. Because he was out for the session.
What?
Yes. Her like 4'10", what was she? Was she an Eladrin? I think she was an Eladrin. Or something. Genasi. She was a Genasi. Was like, I'm gonna find the damn near 7 foot tall tiefling barbarian and I'm finna smash.
That is... What did Brett say?
Well, he wasn't there, so we had to call him and ask for consent.
Okay. That's unhinged behavior, but
because
okay.
Everybody was like, this is the funniest thing. And I went, wait, hold on. We should call Brett about that because that could be a serious violation of his character's agency. And everyone's like,
fair.
That's a good idea. That's a good idea. So I called him. He was at a gig. He was on a break during a gig. And I was like, hey, Lula wants to smash Tobias. Are you good with that? And he was like, what? Like, sure, fuck it, I guess. And we were like, all right, we're good to go, people. We got the green light.
I really like that you said that and everyone had a brief moment of like, oh, that's a good point. We didn't think of that. Like, y'all.
Yeah, no,
relax.
The animal behavior was abound that night. And then for the rest of the like 2 months that the campaign ran, we just referred to that day as Welcome to Fucktown. I referred to that place as Fucktown to my GM's dismay.
I bet the GM had major regrets about that one.
Absolutely.
So you just reminded me, I was watching XP to level 3s. They were doing an actual play of Pathfinder. This is quite a while ago. I didn't end up keeping up with that actual play, but there was a scene where Jacob's character just like out of nowhere was like, anyway, me and I can't remember what the other character was, like Severin, I think his name was Severin. He was like, anyway, me and Severin are just gonna go smash now. And everyone was like, what? And he was just like, yeah, that's the thing that happens. And the other player was like, yeah, all right. Just like rolled with it. And I don't know if he told her ahead of time, like, I'm going to do this thing or not. But like, she rolled into it so seamlessly. I was like, wow, what the fuck?
No. That's pretty amazing.
And then there was a really good scene where like the next morning, Jacob's character and the character he smashed like walk out of the room. And Jacob's character's like, hey, y'all, what's good? And everyone else is like, so what happened, bud? He was like, oh,
how'd that go?
Yeah. And he was like, oh, you know, it'd be like that sometimes. Like Jacob's character did not even try to like obscure what happened. And then the other player was like, I'm not talking about this. Like they're like, so Severin, how did that happen? He's like, we're not bringing this up.
Okay, I have another small story.
I was like, oh, that's crazy.
In the first campaign, Ant was in it, and he was playing a like non-binary courtesan, right?
Okay, yeah.
So
dangerous territory.
Yeah. So playing a courtesan, my character was like, I mean, I might be a witch hunter, but technically I'm not a priest. So, and they were like, okay. So we had gotten to the eponymous werewolf town, right?
Oh God.
And first night there, I was staying with Aster's character, my character. They were like rooming together, and I was like, "Hey, do a brother a favor, don't come back for like an hour."
You did the college roommate maneuver?
Yeah. Here's where it gets funny, because Ant's character Marina had a sentient cursed dragon sword that it could speak telepathically to anyone who's ever held it. Not just the current attuned user. So the sword hits up Aster and is like, get me the fuck out of here.
That's pretty funny, actually.
He's like, okay, so I have to do the walk of shame, open the door as quietly as possible.
Slowly
and I'm
slip
like,
the sword out.
Here's the thing. I was like, brother, here, unfortunately for you, I've got a 25 passive perception. So I turn my head and make eye contact.
Oh, no. Oh.
And Aster was like, why? Why would you do that to me?
Oh, that's cursed. Not the eye contact. You didn't have to describe the eye contact. That's unhinged, brother. What the
fuck? Well, because I was like, do you actually try to sneak? And he's like, I try. And I was like, well, brother, I tell you what, I got a 25 passive.
Yeah, you got to beat a 22.
You ain't sneaking past shit.
Yeah, no. Oh, my God.
Oh, my goodness. And then
that's crazy.
The next day, my character was like, hey, he's like, don't talk to me for the next 2 days.
I can't. I just can't.
I can't. He was like, my character just puts his hand up and he's like, I can't look at you right now. And I was like, that's fair, dog.
Fair. Yeah, no, entirely fair.
Oh my God.
You know, never have any fucking in any of my games.
Really?
No. Wait.
No, yeah, no, wait. Brett in Beyond the Gods, he smashed the orc.
He did smash the orc. He did smash the orc.
After you kept pushing him to smash the orc.
I was doing it as a bit. I didn't think Brett would actually go for it.
Look, here's the thing that you have to remember about Brett. If you push him enough, he's going to commit to any bit.
I guess, yeah, that's true. I'm trying to think, was there any other? I feel like... Was it...
Wait, the whole thing with stars with the fucking cult and the prostitutes?
No, they didn't bang the strippers. They just brought them into the church. Yeah.
What?
Yeah. No, that game was very not horny. I'm impressed.
I'm not upset. I'm like actually
impressed. Yeah. I also had in Apocalypse World, I did have 2 characters bang too. That was awkward. That was my friend and my ex-girlfriend. That was a weird one.
Oh no.
Yeah. Shouldn't have let it happen. Don't know why I did.
Look, I had something similar happen with a friend and my ex-friend, and I understand where you're coming from. I understand like how that gets a little awkward.
Yes.
Yeah. I'll get you what. It gets even worse if you have to playing your ex's significant other. That one.
Oh no, I have not done that. Absolutely.
Oh, I'm doing that right now.
Oh, that's true. That's true. You are doing that right now, aren't you? Yeah.
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 And I have a girlfriend now, so it's not a problem for me anymore. Like the baggage just pretty much let itself go. But
there is still some weirdness, though.
A little bit. Yeah. There were some spots before last July where I was like, I don't know if I can do this anymore.
Yes, fair.
It's better now, though.
You know, maybe we should just do a talking about horny on main type shit in games at some point.
I'm down. I'm gonna have to repeat those 2 stories. That's some of my best material, but I'm down.
That's fair. That's fair. Anyway, so what are we actually talking about? I mean, it's semi-related to the weird sex in game situation, actually, kinda. We're talking about, when do you cut the role play short? When do you cut it off? When do you say, like, all right, we're done? Or at the very least, if not cut it short, bring it to a close, I guess is another way you could phrase it, because cut in short implied it didn't reach a conclusion, but sometimes it reaches a conclusion and you just gotta like, all right, we're done. Yeah, so I last session I was feeling like I was gonna say I was feeling like I was letting things meander too much, but that's not entirely true. I think last session I was teetering on the edge of like, all right, are we still having productive role play, or are we just kind of meandering around doing nothing here? You know what I mean? Like, I was right on that cusp last session. I don't know if you guys felt like that on a player side, but I was feeling that a little bit mentally.
I didn't. I'm curious to know at what point you started to feel that way.
I have to think about it. Mostly.
Wait, brother, you can't make a whole topic about it and not have a fucking specific.
Well, because it was kind of a vibe through the whole session. It was kind of like I was teetering on the edge the whole session. So I'm trying to think about what specific things set me off a little bit. It wasn't so much a moment. I guess it was mostly when you guys were talking to the sires in the house that you were staying in the like elf village.
Mm-hmm.
And you started to ask about some of their like, some of the how their faith works type of questions. And at a certain point I was like, okay, Are they just overly humoring me here? And is this kind of a waste of time? You know what I mean? That makes sense?
Sorta. So here's the funny thing. We talked, the reason why I did that, very specifically, was because you were like, well, I wrote all this lore and none of the characters are super interested in that lore. So I was like,
no, yeah.
Well, Isaiah, I'm interested in this lore. Goro usually doesn't give a fuck, but now I can sort of, have my cake and eat it too. I can force Goro to give a shit about it. So it's not necessarily to humor you, it's to finally get what I want in a diegetic way that my character would actually give a shit about.
What made the framing of it different that you felt like your character would give a shit about it in that scenario?
Because he knows these people a little bit more now, and it's a really casual, like, it's hard to get more casual than like the morning after a party, you know?
True.
So it's a situation where Goro is feeling generally curious enough to ask these questions when he typically doesn't, like, not that he doesn't care, but he doesn't feel like they pertain to him, so he just kind of lets things rock. Now it's kind of like the icebreaker of us getting hammered together has come and gone, and now I feel more comfortable asking these questions that I, again, usually wouldn't care that much for.
Fair enough.
Ultimately, yes, it was not to humor you, it was to humor myself.
Okay.
So I can make Goro do what I want to some degree.
Well, so I was, the main thing that I was trying to balance is it was just that idea of, I don't want the players to be doing something only with the objective of humoring me because I brought something up one time or whatever. Because I had mentioned it both to you and Sam. So I was like, all right, is this just Isaiah and Sam humoring me here? You know what I mean? So I was trying to be cognizant of it and being like, all right, let me keep the feelers out for if we're getting to the point of just kind of going in circles, not getting anywhere or anything like that. You know what I mean? Like, let me just be aware. And then after that point, once you guys got back to the city, I was kind of like, all right, I want the players to be able to prepare in some fashion. So I don't want the roleplay stuff to get in the way too much, mostly because of time constraint. So, like, I'm going to try and not keep it rolling too long, you know?
Yeah, I get you there. The thing that I would say is I don't feel like the roleplay ever went in circles, because I have that problem a little bit in my campaign where characters will sort of
go in circles.
Talk, literally talk in circles, where like
that's in my notes.
One character will establish their belief, and then someone else will establish their belief, and then they won't actually, like, they'll question each other's beliefs, but not really in a way that forces a shift. You know what I mean? They'll sort of talk around each other's points, which can be fun if two characters are being obstinate, but sometimes it does drag for, 15, 20 minutes. And
yeah,
they literally do not end the conversation any differently than it started.
Right.
And that can be frustrating for sure.
I'm not saying we hit that point last session. I was getting that spidey tingle that, like, my spider sense was going off, that we were approaching that territory potentially. So I was just trying to kind of keep my eye on it the whole time. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So that's the kind of scenario I'm talking about. And to sort of, well, before we do that, hit follow or subscribe on your podcast platform of choice. Okay, did you do what? No. Okay, hold on. I'll wait. Yeah. Okay, we're good. Okay. So every GM knows this feeling, whether you recognize it or not. You know this feeling, right? The players are having a back and forth in character, or they're talking to one of your NPCs, and they're just, they're really grilling them about some lore or whatever. It's going well and all, But also, you did a lot of prep work this week, and like you really wanted to get to the cool war scene and the boss fight with the demonic general and his sick evil sword named Angel Ripper. So now you kind of have this feeling of like tension or uncomfortableness because you want to get to the thing you did or you prepped. So then you say to yourself, do you cut things short to get to the combat stuff you prepped? Or do you let this roleplay stuff kind of rock because your players are getting into it right now? And is there even really an answer to this problem? No, of course not. Like always, it's on a case-by-case basis where you have to make calls based on what's in front of you. So rather than just saying do X or do Y or whatever, let's have a little bit of a system here. I'm not even going to claim that this is like a particularly amazing or complex system or anything like that. But this is just kind of something I keep in mind when I'm trying to decide what to do when you're getting to that point where you feel like maybe the roleplay is dragging or going on too long or is getting kind of like loop-de-loop. I will say as a little bit of an addendum to this, part of the reason, too, that I was feeling a little bit of that tension with the roleplay is because I did do a lot of prepping the previous week to have a bunch of stuff ready to rock that we actually didn't get to, but we got right up to the edge, which is fine because it means I don't have to prep very much this week, if at all. But that was the other reason it was partially on my brain. Because, you know, you prep the sick dungeon and the sick boss fight, and then your players never get to the goddamn dungeon. You're just kind of like... you know, that kind of shit.
So I'll tell you what, I've definitely, I've been there. I usually err on the side of if my players do want to like faff for 2 hours, like, yes, I typically do get a little bummed, but then I'm like, oh, I don't got to do shit for next week. So that usually is enough to stop me from feeling
that
too
is
upset.
kind of the trade-off, right? Like, okay, next week I don't have to prep as much. I have lots of stuff banked up. That's good. Which is an entirely valid trade-off. But yeah, it is one of those things that kind of worms into the back of your brain. Now, of course, ultimately what we're talking about here is a matter of pacing, right? This is really a pacing question. When do you shift from scene to scene? You know, when do you roll initiative? When do you move from purely role play to some kind of mechanical resolution? It's all about figuring out your pacing. Some groups and games will be perfectly fine with many, many hours of chatting it up and doing that deep Shakespearean style in-character acting, whereas other groups really just want a dungeon fucking monster smack. But most groups want to bounce between these like two major modes. Now, of course, depending on your game, replace the dungeon fucking and monster smacking with, you know, getting in a gunfight or doing a mission if you're playing Cyberpunk, or like getting in a space battle if it's a sci-fi game, you know, replace with whatever your game's kind of action mechanic is, but you get the idea. Most groups will kind of want to bounce between these two modes in, you know, a fairly equal measure. Which ends up meaning for you as the GM, you as the GM and your group have to be cognizant of what this pacing will look like for your game. And so all that is to say that, yes, ultimately, this idea of cutting off the role playing and when to cut it short, blah, 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 is ultimately about pacing, but we're only focused, or at least I'm only focusing on the very specific element of this pacing, which is the roleplay stuff. So let's go through it with that lens in mind. All right, so the first, most obvious, I didn't really order these in matter of importance, but the first one is the most blatant, like, easy go-to answer. Just go by the vibes, dog. Just hit the vibes. Obviously, this is not like a crazy revolutionary statement for me to make, but sometimes it really is just the vibes. Most of the time, even, it's really just the vibes. And that is the easiest place to start. If the vibes are feeling right, then go for it. And if the vibes are starting to feel off, then maybe cut it short. there's not really a secret sauce to that particular bit, you know? After you've played tabletop for a long time, I think your vibometer, your vibe detector gets more advanced, if that makes sense.
Interesting way of wording it, but yes, I know what you're saying.
Right? Like your ability to detect if the vibes are flowing in a fashion that feels good or bad, it's like your ability to detect that gets more refined as you run more games. You know, you just there's just that intuitive something or other you start to pick up on, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's really, that's the only way I can really put it. But like, yeah, obviously it's a really basic statement. There's not much to say. Like, follow the vibes is not necessarily that helpful, but I don't know. Do it. Follow the vibes. Okay, so now on to the more useful stuff. So the first one I have here is consider how much time you have left in a session. I feel like we'll call this a little pet rant, a little mini rant, I guess, maybe. I don't know. I feel like a lot of GMs don't consider the time frame that they're like, okay, hold on. I gotta reorganize the thought. Pause. Too many thoughts just got all jumbled up in my head. I feel like a lot of GMs do not factor in how long they have for a session into how they pace these kind of things out, right? Like, if you know you only have 2 hours, then you got to look at yourself and go, okay, 2 hours is less than most of these games are designed to assume, right? Most games, when you look at their suggested session length, however the game describes it, is almost always 3 to 4 hours. So if you know your group is doing 2 hours, then you got to say to yourself, okay, I need to pace things with the understanding that we are operating in this 2-hour window. So if you're playing D&D, for example, and you know you only got 2 hours, then you know you're only, at best, you're getting one fight done. And you probably don't want to make your fights particularly deep or complicated because you just don't have enough time to work with there. And then you're going to awkwardly cut off in the middle, and then things get jumbled and messy and just, it's not great. The reason that I've become really aware of this myself in considering how much time I have left in the session is that watching actual plays, which are, you know, if the GM is doing their job, you know, an actual play is kind of handled like a show, right? Like a TV show. And that made me realize that pacing out your game kind of like a TV show is something that I think you should strive to do. So, to like bring it all together, this is something I started doing a while ago with my sessions, which is the idea of thinking about them in an extended TV show structure, which means in terms of my pacing for a game, I try to have sessions end on what feels like a logical stopping point, similar to an episode of a TV drama. So that might mean a little bit of a cliffhanger, like a little mini cliffhanger, or just kind of a natural resting point that could easily lead into the next session, similar to how a new episode of a show starts. something like a little bit of room for a small amount of time to pass, or a natural break where a camera might do a cut. What this means in terms of managing roleplay scenes and, you know, whether to cut them off or not is if I feel like the roleplay scene has enough meat on the bones to extend out to a natural endpoint and bump up against the end of the session, then I will let it rock. Or if I feel like there's a small scene afterward that would be a better endpoint, then I might decide around that basis to cut the roleplay scene a little bit short here to then transition into that little shorter scene afterward that'll have a nice little natural endpoint, which will then flow naturally into the next session. Is that all flowing? Get what I mean by all that?
Yeah. Yeah, I get you.
Because I don't know. This is sort of an opinion thing, but I think structuring your games like TV show episodes can really add to the little cinematic flair of things. And that little cinematic flair, I feel like helps with like player investment, you know?
I think it can. I think, for me at least, playing in your games, yeah, I think it does. And a immersive element for sure. I've tried incorporating a little bit of it with my players. It doesn't seem to work as well.
What makes you say that?
Because I don't notice any demonstrable difference.
In terms of how they respond, you mean?
Pretty much, yeah.
I mean, you might not be noticing a difference, but there still might be something there too, you know?
Yeah, but if like, I feel like I'm pretty good at catching on to that kind of stuff with my players, and if I don't notice anything demonstrable, I go, well, maybe they just don't care about it as much, or they're used to a certain kind of play.
Uh-huh. I guess my thought would then become, though, what's kind of your alternative option? Just kind of finish wherever.
Game, yeah, in the first game, it was more of like it felt more like a book and less of an episode. And what I mean by that is I didn't always, in fact, because we had a kind of weird playtime, right? We could only play for about 3.5 hours as opposed to, or 3 hours as opposed to 4 hours. Uh-huh. And because we had 6 players, we were only getting about 2 hours or so of worth of content done
right
in those 3 hours.
Right. So
it felt like something, at a lot of times it was just like, all right, we're going to put a bookmark here in the middle of the page and we just got to keep going next week. And now that I have less players, I do still have 5 players, which is a noticeable improvement from 6 just in terms of like spotlight timing.
Sure.
But
sure, yeah.
It's still a situation where the game moves slower, and I think it moves slower because, and we could have a whole other episode on this, but my players lack cohesion as a party.
Write that down.
Yeah, well, so like in your game, right?
Write that idea, put it in your pocket.
I will. In your campaign, right? It's usually Goro and Senna, and Irina and Don. And then sometimes we'll feel spicy and we'll swap that up to be, you know, Goro and Don, and then Irina and Senna.
Sure, yeah. In
my game, it is a lot of the times every man for himself. Characters will go off and have their own conversation with NPCs. And like, a part of this is my fault, admittedly, because my players are more reactive than I want them to be, even still. So a lot of the times it's NPCs seeking characters out because I kind of need the story to get transferred to the players somehow. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it is a lot of me and one player, and then everyone watches us play pretend for a little bit, which I would like to stop. And the best way for that to stop is to try to get them to do things in pairs and teams.
Makes sense, yeah.
And some of them still aren't getting it.
So
like I'll give you a perfect example.
Okay.
Not to detract from the point, but one of my players.
I think we're on point here.
Okay. One of my players, her like attendant / boyfriend just went missing, right? He's been gone for like 3 or 4 days.
Okay.
They tracked his location to the Long Rim, right? The like outlaw territory in space. And 2 of my players grew up there. One of my players spent the last 2 years there. And rather than go, oh, well, Nate, Echo, and Troy are all from the Long Rim.
Let me bring the other player along who's from there.
Yeah, let me ask them what they know. And that's even better because then they'll walk up to another player and have a conversation, like a self-started conversation. They go,
right,
DM, what can I reasonably do to look this up? And I'm like, why do you have to look it up? You've got free 99 information right there. And of course, they don't know everything I do.
Right.
So eventually it'll be her walking up to them and them asking me and me giving information. But now that's 3, maybe 4 players of the 5 who are collaborating together and gaining information at the same rate.
Yeah, ultimately the information's coming from you, but in universe it's going between the characters, which is still a little different.
Yes. And it occupies more players and you get more done because it's not one player doing a thing and then another player doing a thing and then another player doing a thing.
So you're saying the sort of pairing off thing that's occurring in Fabula, which y'all are doing entirely by yourselves. I didn't really do anything to make that happen. You're saying that has this like benefit towards this pacing idea, especially when we're talking about the role-playing stuff.
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay. So then my question becomes in the idea of, so when you're looking at time in your session, are you kind of throwing that out the window sometimes because you know you just can't control it well enough? Okay. Yep. I see. So if characters are having a big a role play scene and you're like, all right, well, timing wise, this is going to make things not fit well, but you just kind of let it go.
It's just a battle that I have after 6 years been unable to correctly or adequately combat.
I see. Okay. I see. Yeah. I mean, that makes sense. I mean, at least you're aware of it, you know, like even if you can't fully control of it, being aware of it is still good because in the moments where you can capitalize on it, then you do. And in the moments where you can't. And, you know, you just kind of go from there.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's funny too, right? Because I've literally in that last example, you know, my player was like, how do I, you know, she's like, how do I get this information? And I literally was like,
right.
Why don't you ask Troy and Echo?
Right.
And she was like, oh, well, I mean, I was like, no, just ask them. Like, and this was a little unfortunate because I got called away as she went to ask them. So they were kind of stuck floundering without the information they needed. And I was just unavailable. But
right.
In an ideal, that's not the case.
So your players are almost doing like some low-key single-player RPG type of nonsense.
Sometimes, and it can be a little frustrating.
Right.
It's just a little difficult because again, you know, I have to be the ultimate avenue for information travel, but I would prefer if it wasn't a one-on-one.
Right.
And,
right.
Even when players are like, you know, you have some free time, what do you do? And it's like, all right, I'm going to go off and have an adventure. And you're like, away from
everybody else.
Everybody else?
Yep.
All right, okay, fuck it.
Yep.
Yeah. It's funny. And they were better about this before the new arc started. Like during the big fight and the lead up to it, I was seeing it. And I was like, oh, we're developing, we're getting there. And then after that arc, it just gone.
Huh. All right. Well, I can't necessarily go down too deep down that rabbit hole.
No, I know.
There's lots of different thoughts I'm having there. Okay. So yeah, that's one of the options, is this idea of trying to consider how much time you have left and trying to figure out where those good natural breaking points are and trying to steer the roleplay scene into those natural breaking points. And then if you can't, working with what you got, as it were, kind of in Isaiah's case. The next big one is getting a sense for your player's boredom.
This is a big one.
And this one,
This is a big one.
Oh yeah, this is a muscle, and it really does take time to refine this, and I don't really know how to describe the process of training this muscle, but it's just one of those things. So the feeling of boredom, or boredom overall during a game, is, for better or worse, more weighted in your hands as the GM than it is your players. What this means is sometimes you have got to get a sense for that boredom and just do something about it. Now, you might prickle a little bit at the idea that this problem is entirely in your hands, or mostly in your hands. This isn't only because people put too much onus on the GM position in this case. There's a lot of situations in tabletop games where people put too much onus on the GM and it causes unnecessary stress on the GM and just makes things tense for no reason. This isn't really one of those situations, because the thing is, the players simply have a harder position from which they can operate if they want to try and push past the boredom. They don't control the framing, and they don't control the NPCs. So even if they want to move on from a scene and push through the boredom, they kind of can't, right? So when they're presented with no other option, they will simply continue to speak with the NPC or continue to do whatever role-playing thing they're doing, even if they don't want to, because they do not have, within the social contract, they do not have the power to move out of this phase. It's just not in their hands. It's just more in your hands as the GM, just by nature of how it's structured. So that leaves you as the GM to have to pick up on that feeling and intuit that it means it's time to move on. Like, you have to intuit that boredom sensation and then go, okay, we have to move on because, nobody's having fun. And it is true that you will sometimes intuit incorrectly at the end of the day. I read my notes wrong there. Yes, you will sometimes intuit incorrectly, but at the end of the day, you're better off trying to keep the ball rolling than simply leave things as is and let it peter out into nothing. Because even if you make a wrong call sometimes, if you go for it and make the correct call most of the time in terms of getting a sense for that boredom, the game will do overall better across the board. And if you do make a really bad call, like you think everyone's getting bored, but everyone was actually getting really, really invested, and it's just that the scene was kind of slow, but you misread the situation, just walk it back. Just be like, all right, anyway, moving on. And the players say, wait, whoa, we weren't done with that. And you go, oh, okay, sorry, I read that wrong. And just walk it back.
Yeah.
It's a weird thing. I feel like some people have this this feeling, this sense that once I commit something to something as a GM, I can't take it back. I can't retcon things. But like, you absolutely can. You know?
You can. You do run into one issue, which is you need players to be okay with saying, no, wait, I wasn't done with that. Because you do have the issue of players are like, oh, okay, I guess we're done now. And it's like, no.
You want
a degree of this is you're done when you say you're done. Like, right, if you're faffing around for 45 minutes, I'm gonna have to cut it off. But like, if you feel strongly enough about the conversation you're having as a player, you need to tell the GM, no, I'm not done.
Yeah, you need to have your table, or your proverbial table in our case. Your table culture needs to be such that the players feel open to saying like, no, wait, hold on. They need to feel like that's something they can do. So for sure, you do need to have that, I guess buy-in feels like a weird word, but yeah, like buy-in from the players to be able to do that kind of thing. And conversely too, you could have players who are willing to just say like, GM, I'm kind of bored with this. Are we done? You know, like that's also something that's okay.
Yeah,
which is kind of operating from that same space of the table culture being willing to bring up when you're bothered by something or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, look, Paladin will make no bones about this. He's had to do this before, where, you know, when the first campaign came, you know, crashing down, when the GM kept being like, what do you do, Vaughn? He's like, Vaughn's waiting. Vaughn wants to get the fuck out of here.
Right. Yeah. Right. It's one of those...
Yeah. 100% valid.
Those moments where you're like, I'm just ready for the next bit that, cause you know, you as a player, you're like, GM, you prepped the game. I'm expecting you to give me the content that you made. I assume you also want to get to the content you made, right? So I'm waiting for you to give me the next thing.
Ideally, yeah.
Yeah, that's how it should work. You should want, it's actually a good thing if your players are like, my character's not doing anything, I'm waiting for the next thing to happen. It's actually kind of good because it means what your players are saying to you is, I want the next thing to happen. Right? Like I am wanting that to happen. I'm expecting you to deliver me the next bit of content. Like, yeah, hit me, GM. I want your thing. But yeah, this feeling of picking up on the boredom, I think it's, even if you're only correct half of the time, I still think it's better because, again, like I said, players don't have the ability to push through the boredom sections, right? Like narratively and like socially, they do not have the tools on their side of the table to be able to push through things. They can ask you as the GM, like, hey, can we move on? Like, I'm done with this thing. But like in character and in-game mechanically, they do not have the tools to just push past a scene if they're getting bored. They just can't do that. And also, most of the time, players are not going to want to try to push past a scene like that because they don't know how the other players are feeling. So they're like, I don't want to make any assumptions. I'm not going to say anything or make any declarations unless the GM says anything. Because in a tabletop scenario, the GM is given extra power. You know, we are willingly, you know, as a group, you willingly concede extra power to the GM socially. So if the GM says, all right, we're getting bored, move on, everyone is okay with that. Whereas if a player out of character says, I'm getting bored, let's move on, there's a little bit more of a tension there. And that's not to say that groups will not do it. Like, I'm sure most groups will, but there's still just that little extra, there's that little extra resistance. Whereas if the GM says it, it's just that little extra point of authority that pushes it over the edge. So the onus is on you as the GM to get that sense and sniff it out. Which is that more work for you as a GM? Kinda, yeah. But is it super hard? Like, no, not really. Because after you've played with a group for a little while, you know when they're bored. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you just, especially if the group you're playing with is people that you hang out with in other contexts, like they're friends outside of just the D&D game. You know when they're bored. You can fish it out. Like, there's a thing you pick up on where you're like, oh, they're not liking this. And I don't know how that works or what's going on there. I don't know. Talk to a psychologist, but it's a thing.
Yeah, I'm not sure how I would describe it myself, but yeah, it's something that you can pick up on, and it's small things. You'll notice, maybe the tone is slowing down. Characters are a little slower to react. Players are. You'll hear a lot of the uhs, like the uhs. Well, like. The big one I noted, the big one I pick up on, and this is pretty universal, is you say something to the character or the player, and you don't get an immediate response, and they go, "Huh? What did you say?" And you like repeat. But when you get one of those, you're like, we're losing them a little bit. You know what I mean? I would agree with you if that wasn't something that happened to me every single time I talked to one character. Well, don't get me wrong. It's not always boredom, but it can be. It's one of those indicators. Yes. Yeah, especially if you have if I say to you, like you, Isaiah, as a player, if I say to you, oh, like Goro X, Y, or Z, and you go like, huh, what? Repeat that? Then I know that I lost you a little bit because you almost never do that. You know what I mean? Yeah. So like, it also can vary on a player by player basis for sure. An individual player basis is an important thing to also build your muscles for, essentially. But yeah, it's a funny thing. It's one of those weird human psychology things that we just pick up on. Even when you're doing it over voice chat with no visual indicators, you still pick up on things. Somehow. No, you do. It's like you said, I can't really put a direct, I'm not a psychologist. I right, yeah, I don't know how to. I'm a hobby psychologist, if anything. I like to understand. I like to study people's like patterns in a weirdly sociopathic kind of way, but I can't explain to you why they do the things. I can just pick the patterns out when I see them and assign inferences to them. Yeah. Nothing definitive. So, yeah, that's the idea of the picking up on a sense of boredom and ultimately going, all right, players are bored, let's move on. That one's pretty straightforward. Another one is checking in on that feeling of the wheels spinning. Are we just spinning our wheels and getting a sense for that? This is kind of the idea of spinning your wheels. It's similar to the idea of boredom, but it's not exactly the same. There's important differences. Players can sometimes get caught in the roleplay time loop and start to really spin their wheels and go nowhere, where effectively they're having their character repeat what they're saying, restate ideas in a slightly different way over and over again, or simply saying a whole lot of nothing. This can be a result of the boredom and a cause of the boredom. It can go either way. But you can also have a situation where the players are spinning their wheels, but they are having fun. Or
when they don't know 100% what they want to say or do, but they also don't necessarily want to cut the conversation. Those are two scenarios. The solution
it's something
here,
that happens a lot where Go on.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say it's a solution where, and you get this from time to time, where a player might be in like out of character, kind of out of it. Because, you know, I get this. One of my players is a nurse at a hospital, so she will be really invested, but she might not have the bandwidth to give the conversation as much as she wants.
Right.
So it's one of those things where, you know, you can see that it's kind of petering out because this person themselves is losing steam, but they're like, no, wait, there was stuff I wanted to do. I'm just
right. They're still invested,
melting
but
down.
They're wheel spinning. Yeah. They're wheel spinning just because they're not sure where to go with it. The solution here can be a little different from simply, you know, cut the roleplay short, but it does kind of follow the same logic. The first big one is you might want to just pause the session a little for a moment and clarify with the players what they're trying to accomplish, right? If you feel like a player is spinning their wheels, but they are having fun with it or they are trying to get something done, then you can put it on pause and go, okay, hold on. What are you trying to say? What is your objective in talking to this character? What do you want out of this? Right. And saying that on a player to GM level. And then once you resume from the pause, then you can go, okay, I, as a GM, I now know what the player wants out of this, so I can direct the conversation towards what they're trying to get. You know, what they're trying to get out of it. This method can help you to get through a scene where the wheel spinning is occurring, but it isn't necessarily because of boredom, but it could be starting to lead into boredom because the wheel spinning is coming from an unclear goal. Right? That being the key difference there. Mm-hmm. Another option is to kind of direct the conversation towards a conclusion, whether this be the NPC making a particular remark, or you as the GM saying on the player level, okay, we're trying to hit this point, so let's work towards that. This is something where you are definitively ending the scene, but it might not be as immediate, right? You're not necessarily cutting it short right where it is, but you're saying, all right, I'm working towards this objective. This is what I'm doing. And you are declaring an end, and then you're kind of naturally petering towards that end. This is kind of like the boredom thing. If you direct towards a conclusion, you might sometimes kind of make the wrong call and then end up at the wrong conclusion point, and then the players are like, hold on, wait, no, that wasn't what I was trying to do. Again, retcon a little, work backwards, whatever you got to do. And then lastly, of course, if the players are spinning their wheels, you just simply cut where you are. You know, maybe say to them, is there any last points you want to throw in character? Or if, you know, or ask the players, did you get your ideas across? And then just wrap it there, right? Just cut it and just be done. Because ultimately, spinning your wheels is always bad. Even if it's kind of a fun spinning your wheels, it's still not a good thing because it means that you're not really getting anywhere, you're not making progress, you know, you're just kind of wasting time for no particular reason. And ultimately, time is precious, and this hobby is already already very absorbing of our time. We don't need to make that worse.
I don't know. I don't know that I feel comfortable saying it's always bad, because you have to. Yes, this hobby is
time consuming.
Harsh on time consuming, but things have to come in phases. Sometimes the GM gets to show off all their cool stuff that they work super hard for, but sometimes the players just want to relax a little bit and slow things down. And as long as the GM gets to do what they want within a reasonable time frame, maybe it's not this session, but in your case, we have all of next session to do that thing. Right. You got to give and take a little bit. So is it generally something that's to be avoided? Yes, but I think you should put the caveat of, if it happens from time to time, that's okay. Just keep a potentially hard limit on how much it happens.
I almost wouldn't necessarily call that wheel spinning, though. Like, wheel spinning to me is a very specific situation where you kind of lock yourself into like a weird logic loop. And even if the players are like trying to just have a relax and chill out session, if they start spinning their wheels in that session, it means that they're not even really doing any of the relaxing bit. They're just kind of going around in circles. It's a very specific, I can't think of a good example. It's a very specific situation though when you hit that wheel spinning point. You know what I mean? Like, I get what you're saying, but I'm almost considering wheel spinning to be like a slightly different thing. It's like a unique stun lock state.
I get what you're saying. So I guess maybe I'll shift my thesis to try to be good about knowing if they are wheel spinning or if they're just vibing. Right. Well, that kind of goes back to my first one of just get a sense for the vibes, right? Like, go by the vibes, man. Mm-hmm. Right. That's really what it is. Because you're right. Sometimes you as the GM might be like, all right, we're hitting the wheel spinning state. And the players are like, no, we're just in like a vibing state. And you kind of have to go, oh, okay, well, yeah, then all right, I can let the vibing go. That's fine. Because, like, this is kind of a goofy, extreme example, but just for the sake of kind of clarifying what I mean, if the players are hanging out at a bar in character and they're talking to each other, whatever, and then their characters get drunk, and then, a player's like, so what are you drinking? And then the player, the character responds, and then like 2 minutes later it goes, so like, what are you drinking again? You know what I mean? Because he just doesn't know where else to go with it. That would be the wheel spin, right? Like, that's the wheel spinning thing where you're kind of just, you're vibing, but you're vibing like, you're like ineffectively vibing. Which sounds like a goofy thing to say, but you know what I mean? Yeah, no, I mean, to counter my own point, there is a time where players want to vibe, but they just don't have enough material to vibe with. Yeah, they don't have the, right? They don't have the material. To what you were saying before, players can't end scenes. They can choose to stop participating in a scene. They can say, right, I've said my piece, I'm done. Yeah. But if you as the GM don't end the scene, the players are trapped in fucking limbo until you choose to do so. Yeah. So it does require a level of cooperation on both sides, for sure. Yeah, it's definitely cooperative. I mean, I think ultimately trying to decide when the role play ends is like the most cooperative that games get, because when you're doing mechanical things, right, the game tells you when the mechanics end, right? If you're doing combat, the game says this is when the combat ends, right? When the players do X, Y, or Z. But when you're just operating purely in the nebulous roleplay space, the game just sits back and goes, good luck, champ, So, deciding when the roleplay is done and when to cut that scene, it is the most cooperative element in a lot of ways. And yeah, there is a funny thing where the vibes are good, but also the wheels are spinning. And when you're in that situation, you as the GM gotta go like, all right, well, we gotta do something here. Because otherwise, what the fuck is the point?
And
that's a valid point.
It's one of those things where it's like teetering. There's like a super fine line. You're like teetering on the edge of the vibes are immaculate and we're fucking around, and then one little thing happens and then we fall into the wheel spin and just now we're doing nothing. Like, it's such a fine line. And again, it's one of those, you just get a muscle, you get a feel for it kind of things. It is kind of funny.
I had a situation once, I think I talked about it on podcast, but I had a situation once where two of my players were talking for like 30 minutes.
Oof, yeah,
and I was like, guys, I really hate to cut y'all off, but we got stuff to do. Like, I can't.
Shit to get. Yeah, I got prep to do.
And they were like, yeah, okay. But they like
kept going.
They were so deep in the weeds that they couldn't find a good spot,
an end point.
Stop.
Yeah.
So it went on for another 15 minutes before I was like, guys, I got a hard stop you. You got 60 seconds. Like, it's been almost an hour, and they felt bad, and it hasn't happened since. But like, it was one of those things where I was like, I am begging you, please.
Well, that's the other thing too, is you're playing characters, right? And sometimes you don't always have an entirely clear vision of like, how would my character respond? What would my character do here? Sometimes that vision is not entirely obvious because, maybe the character is put in a situation that you never expected them to be in, so you don't know how to respond, or maybe the character has shifted over the course of the campaign and you feel a little bit differently about them than when they started, so you have to kind of reassess. And then, yeah, that's where you get in those situations where those two players were vibing, but they were wheel spinning at the same time because they didn't know how to close it out. They didn't know how to like write their conclusion paragraph.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and those, you as the GM just go, I gotta do something. Which actually kind of transitions nicely into my next point, which is my last major point here, which is sometimes you gotta think to yourself, do I give a shit about this? Do I care? Sometimes you gotta be like, and this is gonna sound mean, and I know this is gonna sound mean, but like, hear me out on this one. Sometimes you as the GM, you have just run out of fucks to give. Now, you of course want to facilitate your players' fun, and you want to try and let them keep things going if they like the scene in question. But sometimes you just don't care, and you gotta just call it. It might seem a little bit mean or a little bit crass to basically go, I'm bored with this interaction, so let's end it here. But you, as the GM, are ultimately also a player in the game. And part of running an RPG is that it is fun for you to do so because you have a desire to do it. But not every scenario is gonna 100% be to your liking. So sometimes you just gotta call it. Especially because, realistically, most scenes that you're gonna roleplay out require you as the GM to act as an NPC, or at the very least, the general things in the area you have to step in and control to facilitate the scene. You can't be an entirely passive observer most of the time. There are scenes where sometimes you can just absolutely backseat 100%, but most of the time you have to interject a little bit, even if only a smidge. So if you don't give a shit about the scene for whatever reason, and you're forcing yourself to do it, it's probably not going to be a very good scene anyway, because you're kind of like a professional actor who's just phoning it in for a paycheck. The audience can tell.
So let me ask you a question. Are you specifically talking about a scene where you as the GM are a participant, or you're just watching, for lack of a better word?
I'm mostly talking as a participant, but sometimes when you're watching, you also have to do this.
Yes. So my only thing is, if you're watching, I feel like you have to do this significantly less. Yeah, like
less.
Usually,
yes. If you're,
I was gonna say my rule of thumb is generally, again, it's the like if the conversation's been going on for more than 20 minutes, it's not necessarily out of boredom, but it is a situation where it's like, even if I'm not that interested, it's like, guys, there's just other shit we have to hit. Like,
right. And that's that goes back to my point where I was saying before, where most of the time you as the GM, you do have to facilitate the scene, you know, like even if there is no NPC present, sometimes you still have to kind of facilitate and like referee the scene a little bit, right? You might have to describe the area or remind your players about a lore tidbit. So you still have to be like kind of paying attention, even if you really don't give a shit about what they're talking about. You know what I mean? So it's rare for you to have a situation where you are completely removed. But even in those situations where you are completely removed, yeah, sometimes you do still kind of just be like, I'm calling it. Now, of course, this particular method of just saying like, I don't give a shit, we're done here, there's a massive caveat on this attached to it, which is to say, you know, don't do it too much, right? Sometimes you just gotta suck it up and interact with the scene that you don't care for because your players are loving it. It's about striking a balance as much as possible, right? So I'm not saying that every time there's a roleplay interaction between two characters that you don't give a shit about, you should stop them. What I'm saying is, sometimes you let them rock, and sometimes you say to them, guys, I really want to get to the boss fight that I prepped for this session because I think it's going to be really fun. So can we please stop doing what you're doing? You know what I mean? It's that balance. And you got to play it by ear and let it rock. And, you know, you got to kind of be like, do I have... Because sometimes you as a GM, right, you have something you really, really, really are excited about and want to get to, but sometimes you don't, right? Sometimes the stuff you have for the session, like, you know, it's prepped and you're like, well, I know where I want it to go, but I'm not super invested or anything like that. So if the players do an extended roleplay scene that I don't care about, that's fine. But if you have something you really, really want to get to, like a really sick boss fight or a really cool puzzle or a sick dungeon, and they're doing an excessive amount of roleplay that you don't really give a shit about, you know, it's fair to be like, hey, can we get to the cool dungeon I prepped, please? I would really like to run the dungeon, please. You know, it's very much a give and take. But I think a GM is completely within their right to be like, I'm not really that invested in what y'all are doing right here, and I want to move on to the next thing that I am invested in. So, like, let's call it. I think it's a completely valid thing to do.
And within reason, I agree.
Well, that's why I said it's within reason is the making it a balance, right? That's what I was saying about gauging. You can't do it all the time, and you need to kind of make a call and be fair on both sides, right? That's the within reason element of it. Because again, you're a player at the table too, and if you want to get to something really fun that you prepped, you know, it's unfair to you if the players want to fuck about with a bunch of nonsense and you really want to get to the cool thing you prepped. You know, like, you want to have your fun also, right?
You do, yeah.
And that whole thing really goes back to the idea that the GM is a player and not just... The GM is not a robot that facilitates your fun for you, right? The GM is a player that helps to facilitate the fun for you, but also has to facilitate their own fun. Right? It has to go both ways. You can't treat your GM like a manservant. They're not your butler.
Yeah, your GM is not an AI. You can't just punch
yes.
prompts in and expect answers.
Right. So if your GMs cut you a little short on a roleplay scene because they're really just not that invested and they really want to get to the cool boss fight, then, sometimes just like let it happen. It's all right. And here's the thing. If the GM is so invested in whatever, like the boss fight or the dungeon or whatever that they prepped, if they're so interested in getting to that, it probably means they think it's going to be really cool, which probably means it's going to be fun for you as a player anyway. So like, let it rock and trust them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, assuming, of course, you don't just fucking despise combat, but also at that point, why are you?
Right, but also, why are you playing D&D, or why are you playing Fabula, or why are you playing Shadowrun, right? Like, if you despise combat, then that's a different discussion. But also, if you're playing a game that's not combat focused, perhaps the thing the GM have prepped is some sort of different mechanic about the game that they're really excited about,
Yeah.
And again, I do understand that what I'm saying sounds kind of mean, but sometimes a little bit of crassness, a little bit of meanness is okay if like the end result is a good payoff. If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I get you.
And for sure, like you said, if it's a scene where you as the GM are completely removed, you definitely should give more leeway, because you as the GM are like, you don't have to put any effort in. So yeah, like give a little more wiggle room. But if it's a scene where you're involved with as an NPC and you don't give a shit and you really want to move on to the next thing, then you really got to say to yourself like, all right, come on, y'all, like we're moving on.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if you don't like the NPC that much, because like sometimes as GMs we'd be throwing an NPC just as like a quick one-off to get the point across, and for whatever reason the players get really attached to that fucking NPC and you don't give a goddamn shit about this jackass. I don't want to roleplay Glupshitto. I just needed him to hand you the letter. Why are we having a conversation with Glupshitto? Please stop. I don't want to roleplay Glupshitto.
Oh, yeah, no, I don't know. If a player
happens.
really attaches themselves to the NPC, I'm just like, all right, fuck it, let's let it rock.
I mean, most of the time, yes, but sometimes there are some situations where I'm like, I really just can't be bothered with this guy. Like, he just doesn't matter. You know what I mean? Like, just move on, y'all. It happens. It happens. It's, Or sometimes you throw an NPC in there that you just needed to be like a little background comment, and then the players put way too much attention on it, and you're just like, oh god, no, come on, guys. There's a way cooler guy if you just go into the next room. Don't do this to me. Like that kind of shit.
I haven't had that problem. The thing that I have a problem with is, and I know my players say that they don't do this, but I know that they 100% do, where an NPC will give their opinion, which is wrong. Like, oh, we should go there. And an NPC's like, maybe you shouldn't go there because going there is suicide. And like, oh, we can't go there now. They said it's suicide. The GM said we're going to die. And it's like, no, I was.
Oh,
yes. Your mechanic friend who cares about you doesn't want you to die. But yes, that ultimately is where you have to go. It would just be crazy for a person to tell you to not want to do that. You know what I mean? Or to tell you to run there willingly.
Yeah, yes, the idea that everything an NPC says is gospel.
Yes, the NPC is telling you not to go to the Valley of Megadeth because it's called the Valley of Megadeth, but the Valley of Megadeth is absolutely where Dark Amon the Cruel is. Yeah.
The NPC is telling you that because if the NPC goes to the Valley of Megadeth, they will get brutally murdered, whereas if you go to the Valley of Megadeth, you're going to get a lot of sick XP and a cool sword.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, for sure. Yes. I've run into that where I'm like, y'all are trusting this NPC way too much.
I actually had a funny opposite to this because the player who was searching for her boyfriend, she found out where the guy is, right? Like in the general area of space he is. And keep in mind, you're in space. So even if it looks super close to anything on the space map, you're light years away.
Right.
So she was like, we have to go there now. And then what NPC had to be like, you don't know where you're going. Yeah, I don't know where it is.
Yeah.
We're just going to fly in the vastness of space for months looking for this fucking guy. Maybe we should get some coordinates before we jump into the fucking deep end.
Yeah, we need something a little more precise than he's in the ocean.
Yeah.
Like, well, we have to go to the ocean right now. Well, that doesn't narrow things down, does it?
Yeah, it would basically be like, yes, you know that this guy's in New York. All right, we're going to New York. It's like,
yeah.
Where in New York? The state's fucking huge.
Yeah. I heard this guy's in Texas. All right, well, that's a lot of space.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's for sure one of those things where you're like, hold on, pause. Think about this for a second.
Yep.
Shit. What was I gonna say? Damn it, I lost. I don't know, but yes, ultimately that last little point, I do understand how it sounds, but you do also have to keep that idea in the back of your mind that, yeah, you're a player too. Like, you at the GM, you have to have fun too. You can't just be, you're not just like a weird sadist slave or masochist slave for your players. Unless you want to be, I guess, maybe? Shrug?
Yeah, I don't think that's, let's assume the opposite.
I mean, assume the opposite, but there's probably somebody out there who likes that for some reason. Just being...
Are they playing the Book of Vile Darkness? Like
I know, they're just being bullied by they just really love being bullied by their players all the time. I don't know. Something like that. Anything you want to add on the tail end here?
No, I mean, I think we hit all the big points. Just, as players, try to be cognizant of when it's time to move on. And as a GM, know when to keep it moving and when the players start wheel spinning, because it doesn't feel great to feel like they're just vamping for time.
Yeah.
Like I said, last session I had to step away, so the players were kind of forced to vamp for time, and I felt so bad because they were well, we know it's like super dangerous, like it's just crazy dangerous. I was like, oh god, they're stalling out. Fuck, I gotta get back to my computer.
They were just saying nothing.
Yeah, and I felt so bad.
I mean, do you have any other methods for getting a feel on when to cut the roleplay shit that I didn't think of?
No, I don't think I have anything unique. I mean, all I can use is like my anecdotal evidence, right? And like you kind of brought it up. If someone brings up their initial point again, if the conversation has done a full loop, and it looks like we're going down the second lap on the track, that's when you cut it.
Yeah, if you hear the same opening sentence as when the scene started, that's a strong indicator to be like, no. Time to cut it. Yes, because that I have definitely had that situation where the player's like, so like, why do you fight? And then they talk for 10 minutes and then they go, but like, why do you fight? And you're like, oh wait, hold on.
Yeah,
it's definitely happened. When they quite literally repeat themselves. That's rare, more rare, but fucking crazy when it does happen.
Yeah, that one's more rare. What you typically get is players being like, I don't know how to keep going. I've not been given the cue to cut. The director hasn't said cut yet, so I gotta keep making shit up.
Yeah,
for my character's backstory that didn't actually happen. Typically,
just make up like, I don't know. I ate a fish one time straight out of the river. Like what? I don't know. I ate my goldfish because I was so distraught.
Oh my god. I was so distraught that it died that I meant to bury it, and then I fucking ate it, and then I threw up for 2 days. It's a real thing that a real human being has done. Famous human being at that.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, that is kind of a funny thing that happens where the player has not gotten the cue to cut, so they just they just kind of restate their philosophy in a slightly different way.
Uh-huh.
They're like, well, I love peace, you know, I'm not a man of war. And then they like 10 minutes go by and they're kind of like, well, I just think the sword is a dangerous tool and it shouldn't be used. You're like, I think that's the same thing you just said before. You're just restating your character's thesis.
Uh-huh. So do whatever you can to avoid that as players.
Not
if
do
you
that,
feel
yeah.
like
the regressive loop.
Well, so honestly, you know what? No, I'm going to rephrase the statement. The players have limited control over ending a scene because the player can leave, right? You can do the Vax'ildan and then I walk away.
True.
Players, you need to be more comfortable being like, you know, character being like, look, I appreciate what you said, but I really don't think, like, I think violence isn't the answer and you don't seem to agree.
Yeah.
So hopefully we'll have this conversation again soon. And then you tell the GM and then I get up and walk away.
Right.
Like the conversation's over. You've said what you need to say.
That's true. You can be a little more declarative if you just say that your character just removed themselves or says a final statement and be done with it kind of thing. That's true. You don't have full control, but you do have that limited angle to work with for sure. And hopefully, if you do that, that should be a very clear indicator to your GM. Oh, okay, I as the GM should also now cut things.
Yeah. Actually, I think each of us in the Fabula party has done that at least once, where they have finished talking and walked away or stormed off or was like, all right, well, I'm gonna leave you sitting on that thought. I'm gonna go get a drink. You know what I mean? I think we've all done it at least once. And I know that Irina has done it because she has gone to full conversation, been like, and then I ninja vanish away.
I mean,
I can't. To, an NPC, I don't remember who, but it was one of the like, and then I'm going to use my Fabula to fucking just vanish.
Just backflip out of there.
Yeah.
I can't think of specific examples, but I think you're probably right about that. All right, well, that has been us. If you have liked what you heard, perhaps leave a like or a rating on whatever platform you're on. However your platform of choice indicates approval. And that's all I got. I got nothing fancy. That's all I got.
Well, we forgot this. If you can, would you mind shooting us a dono over at our coffee? You can find the link in the description. Help get Brett paid. Appreciate you.
Indeed.
That's all I got.